Hello everyone, my name is Adi and welcome back to the channel. As you are probably well aware, in 3 days Crown Tundra will drop and release a ton of new Pokemon into the VGC metagame. It's going to change the format completely, after which we have 16 days to build the best team for Players Cup 2. Team building at the start of a format is drastically different from team building at any other point in a format's lifespan. You don't have an established list of teams to steal, nor do you have an established list of teams to beat. And so this is a task that I am personally very bad at. I have struggled at every single early season regional I have attended. And so instead, rather than give you my personal unqualified advice, I thought I would reach out to some friends who are a lot more qualified to give you that advice. And so each of these people has won an early season regional. In fact, they won the first North American regional of each of these formats. And so without further ado, let's get into it.
What's up, everyone? My name is Cedric Bernier. I go by Talent Online, and the main early format success I have of note is winning the Dallas Regional in the VGC 2018 playing format. One strategy I find to be particularly effective as well as consistent in early format team building is to bring the best while also bringing it better than your opponents. And what I mean by this is basically early on in the format, identify which Pokemon will be generally strong and popular throughout the year, and use those Pokemon, essentially. This counts on it being early format, and all the tools to handle beating those Pokemon haven't really been discovered or optimized as of yet. So you'll be winning a lot of battles off of that. And then you go one step further and try and optimize the movesets of those popular Pokemon that you're using to win the mirror. I think the best example I can call towards for this is Max Airstream Dragapult in 2020. Early on, positionally, the Dragapult mirror was pretty much a wash, often came down to speed ties. But I'd say mid to early year, people started putting Fly onto their Dragapult so they could max Airstream and gain the speed advantage in certain situations, so they could give themselves positional options so that the mirror didn't end up just coming down to a 50-50 speed tie. Another strategy I find to be really effective is to go with what you know. So you have experience playing in previous years, see how feasible it is for you to emulate a team or playstyle that you used in those past years, and gain some comfort in. This can really help you learn a new format very quickly because you're not really starting from ground zero. You already have a strategy you're fairly comfortable with. So instead of trying to learn that strategy, you're learning about the pace of the format and just generally how to be handling threats in the new format. I'll point to the hard Trick Room players every year will try and build a new Trick Room team, and generally they find a lot of success early format because they're playing with something they have way more comfort in with than a lot of other players, so they're not starting from ground zero, and in that way they have a big advantage. I'll also point to my Dallas 2018 victory, doing something similar, just really bringing a balanced Charizard build that I had gained a lot of familiarity with using in the VGC 14 and VGC 15 formats. The last strategy I have for early format team building success is also the most fun, I think, and it's to identify a strong new addition to the format and see how far you can push that. This really lets you be creative and see if you can break new ground with the new tools you've been offered by Pokemon in that format. And I'll point to Aaron Trailer doing this really well in VGC 2020, winning the Dallas Regional with it. Basically identified that Gmax Charizard was a really strong Pokemon that not a lot of people were using. Wasn't on most people's radar to the point of Gmax Wildfire not being coded correctly on Pokemon Showdown. And identifying this and building a really strong team around the Gmax Charizard strategy ended up bringing Aaron a pretty convincing regional championship, and I think one of the biggest regionals of all time. And I'd say this is the most volatile of all the strategies because you might not identify something that's actually that great, or as the format progresses rapidly at the start, this strategy gets weaker and weaker, and maybe more people latch onto it than you thought might, and then it just becomes meta. But overall, I think this definitely has the highest peaks, just because the surprise factor, beyond just the initial surprise, if someone hasn't built their team for this really strong, potentially meta-defining strategy yet, you might have just a lot of free wins in Swiss and Top Cut, honestly, and that can really make or break a tournament run.
That is some awesome advice from Cedric. Our next guest is Gavin Michaels, who won the first regional of the 2017 format in San Jose.
In a new format, you want to be more focused on your strength rather than covering your weaknesses. New strong Pokemon and archetypes are going to be discovered as the format plays out, and odds are what you end up building will be weak to something. If you're putting enough pressure out, though, then you can always fall back to that. There is a ton of value in coming up with something good that your opponents didn't think about while they were making their team, and it's a lot easier to do that early format. Focusing how to build around something underutilized will serve you a lot better than trying to invent the new standard, because 1, everyone's going to be trying to build the new standard, and 2, people are going to be prepared for it. In the beginning of Sun Series, a team that was really popular was called All Six, because it just reached the top of the ladder through a bunch of people, and 2 weeks into the format, it had won a bunch of local events. Then the third week, when Philadelphia Regionals came around, All Six did terribly because everyone was prepared for it. And what ended up doing really, really well were things that people hadn't really prepared for, like Toxicroak and Venusaur. Playing around these Mons that you realize are super strong and other people don't is what's going to lead to a lot of success. Other examples of that is in 2017, I won a regional because people didn't realize how good Mimikyu Snorlax was. For large portions of 2017, at least in the beginning bits of it, Snorlax was not used at all. So by taking advantage of realizing how good it was early, I was able to just get myself really good results. Additionally, also in 2017, in the beginning of the format, we didn't think that Tapu Fini would be good. That's not an exaggeration, we just didn't think it'd be any good. And Enosh got second at a regional, only dropping a 1 set with it, and it made everyone realize, oh wow, this Mon is actually really good. Focus on finding Mons that are actually really good, as opposed to just going with consensus on what's really good. Because the consensus on what's really good early on is always wrong.
And last but not least, we have Justin Burns, who won the aforementioned Philadelphia Regionals, the first regional of the 2019 format.
The most important part of team building early in a format is finding out which Pokemon are the best in the format. While this seems like an obvious answer at first, it really is difficult to do so, and in most formats, it took a few weeks of the player base building and testing before some of the strongest Pokemon began to emerge. A recent example of this is Togekiss, a Pokemon that may have been on players' radars as a potentially solid supporting option going into Sword and Shield, but it ended up emerging not only as a powerful supporter, but one of the most dangerous offensive threats in the metagame. So, what can you try to do and be an early adopter of the metagame for your first tournament of a format? In my opinion, this involves a combination of your own testing and theorying alongside watching other players practice on Showdown or streams. The more meticulous you can be with this, the better. My friend I, Magikarp, played a big hand in my success at regionals early in a format because of how detailed his evaluations of each relevant Pokemon were. If you're specifically trying to do well at a major tournament early into a format, here's a few more tips that may help you get the jump on competitors who are trying to figure out what's going to be best at the top of the metagame just like you. Firstly, be offensive-minded. You don't have to go with a full hyper-offensive team like Porygon Z or Sun, but revolving game plans around pinning down threats with fast and powerful moves will be more consistent than trying to rely on defensive cores for everything, because you won't be able to expect every team composition that those threats may appear in. Some examples from my own teams that have done well at early format tournaments include Tapu Lele plus Scarf Kyogre, and Fake Tears Grimmsnarl plus Scope Lens Togekiss and Special Dragapult. Those teams also had defensive pivots, but they didn't stray too far from just being strong generic support mons like Incineroar and Arcanine. Secondly, try to play in smaller tournaments leading up to your major one. This is a great setting to test run your initial ideas and find out other ideas that you didn't think about. While my Sun Series Philadelphia team is known for putting Toxicroak on the map seemingly out of nowhere, I only had it on my team because someone else had used it at a Premier Challenge the week before the regional. Similarly, I may not have brought Rhyperior and Bronzong to Dallas if I hadn't been curb stomped by it at a mid-season showdown a few weeks before. Finally, make sure you use what you're comfortable with. Many of the interactions between teams and Pokemon in an early format are going to be brand new to everyone, and if you aren't familiar with how your team's Pokemon interact with each other, then you're already on the back foot. It's hard to give a specific example for a concept this broad, but an easy one is recognizing that one Pokemon in your team may be able to help one of its allied Pokemon by setting up Misty Terrain with Max Starfall. Things like that can make or break your tournament run, so make sure you at least have some practice games with the team before you bring it to an early format major.
I hope this was useful to you all in the lead up to Players' Cup 2 and at the start of the Crown Tundra format. Thank you so much to Cedric and Justin and Gavin for recording their sagely advice on early format team building. And if you want more sagely advice on both Pokemon and fashion, make sure to follow all 4 of us on social media. Also, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you all later.